Imagine the moment a mother's world shatters inside the happiest place on earth. 1 second her 8-year-old daughter is laughing, posing for a Polaroid beside a smiling rabbit character in front of Sleeping Beauty Castle. The next second the child is gone, swallowed by the crowd, vanished without scream or struggle, leaving only an empty space where hope used to stand. For 20 years Marilyn Hallberg carries that void like a second heartbeat. Every blonde girl on the street a stab of recognition, every phone call a flicker of hope that dies the instant she hears no news. Then, after record Southern California floods scour the land near Disneyland, a farmer peers into a dried-up sewer channel on his property and sees something no one expected: a red suitcase half buried in mud, containing a child's blue daisy dress and a homemade rabbit costume so eerily altered it no longer looks friendly. This is the true story-inspired nightmare of Charlotte Hallberg, a disappearance that became one of California's longest-running unsolved mysteries until nature itself forced the truth to the surface. Welcome to this educational deep dive. We will walk chapter by chapter through unimaginable loss, relentless searching, shocking discovery, and hard-won reunion, mastering advanced English vocabulary and idioms, drawing philosophical lessons from real 1970s theme park safety gaps and missing children cases, and connecting this tragedy to universal wisdom about hope, persistence, and the moral duty to never stop asking what if, because sometimes the happiest place on earth hides the darkest secrets, and sometimes the flood that destroys is the same flood that finally delivers answers. The June 1970 sun blazed over Disneyland's Fantasyland, turning the pavement into a shimmering mirror as Marilyn Hallberg held tight to Charlotte's small hand and felt, for one perfect afternoon, that life could still be magic after her husband's sudden death the year before. Charlotte, 8 years old, blonde curls bouncing under a mouse-ear headband, had begged for months to visit the place where dreams come true. Today was their first trip, paid for with overtime shifts and careful savings. They rode Dumbo, spun in teacups, watched the enchanted tiki room, and when Charlotte spotted the white rabbit character near the castle, she squealed with joy. Marilyn pulled out her Polaroid, snapped the moment, Charlotte beaming, rabbit's pink-ribboned ears framing her face, castle spires rising behind them like a promise. Vocabulary spotlight, shimmering mirror, poetic description of heat-distorted pavement reflecting light, and idiom, life could still be magic, belief that joy remains possible despite grief. Historically, 1970 Disneyland operated with far fewer security measures than today. No widespread CCTV, minimal employee background checks, crowd control focused on guest flow rather than individual tracking. Real missing children incidents from that era, including several brief abductions that ended quickly, often went unresolved due to lack of immediate lockdown protocols. Emotionally, Marilyn's arc begins in fragile hope. Widowhood had dulled her, but Charlotte's excitement rekindled something she thought was gone forever. After the photo Charlotte begged for, just one more ride on Peter Pan's flight, Marilyn agreed, telling her to stay right beside the rabbit character while she bought popcorn. She returned 90 seconds later. 90 seconds to find the rabbit alone, waving mechanically to other children, Charlotte nowhere in sight. Panic hit like a physical blow. Marilyn screamed her daughter's name, pushed through families, begged cast members. Security arrived quickly, but the park was already a sea of faces, strollers, balloons. No one remembered seeing a little girl in a blue daisy dress leave with anyone. Park protocol treated it as a lost child case. Announcements over speakers, cast members searching restrooms and shops, a holding area for unclaimed children. Hours passed. Night fell. Park closed. No Charlotte. Police arrived at 1 a.m. Marilyn gave statements while trembling so violently she could barely hold the coffee they offered. Search widened to parking lots, nearby streets, storm drains. Nothing. Flyers printed overnight covered Anaheim. Television news ran the Polaroid photo. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Private investigators drained savings. Psychics offered false hope. Every blonde girl on the street triggered racing heart and crushing disappointment. Marilyn sold the family home, too many empty rooms, and moved to a small apartment in Buena Park, closer to the park, closer to the last place Charlotte was seen. Philosophical teaching from Viktor Frankl. Even when everything is taken, the last human freedom is choosing one's attitude. Marilyn chose relentless hope over surrender. Modern English learning. Short, breathless sentences, 90 seconds later, nothing. Mirror panic. Practice this rhythm when writing high-tension scenes. Idiom spotlight. Hit like a physical blow. Sudden, devastating emotional impact. As leads dried up and police quietly reclassified the case inactive, Marilyn kept searching. Every weekend driving the perimeter of Disneyland, every anniversary returning to the castle with fresh flowers, every night whispering to an empty bedroom, "I'm still looking, baby." What would you cling to? What single, stubborn promise? If the world told you your child was gone forever, would you accept the silence? Or would you keep screaming into it until something, anything, answered back? 20 years later, January 1990, record rainfall hammers Southern California, rivers overflow, hillsides slide, and the dried-up storm-drained channel running along the edge of Disneyland's property becomes a raging torrent for the first time in decades. Farmer James Beckett, whose family land borders the channel, wades out after the waters recede to check fence posts and irrigation lines. Mud cakes his boots. Debris, branches, tires, shopping carts litters the banks. Near a collapsed concrete section, he spots something unnatural, a red suitcase, half buried, leather cracked but latch still intact. Curiosity outweighs caution. He drags it free, pries it open. Inside, a child's blue daisy dress, faded and mud-stained but hand-sewn with telltale imperfections he doesn't recognize. Beneath it, a rabbit costume head, ears misshapen, face altered with clumsy stitches to look sad instead of joyful, pink ribbon frayed, mesh eyes cracked. His stomach drops. He remembers the Hallberg case. Every local did. He calls police immediately. Detective Nolan Berea arrives within the hour. Marilyn is summoned from her Buena Park apartment. She identifies the dress instantly. "I made it myself. See the hem where I measured wrong and had to redo it." The costume matches the Polaroid, same approximate size, same ribbon placement, but the face has been deliberately changed. Marilyn's knees buckle. 20 years of held breath release and sobs. Vocabulary spotlight. Unnatural, strange or out of place in a way that causes unease, and idiom stomach drops, sudden sinking feeling of dread. Historically, late 1980s/early 1990s Southern California flooding, notably 1995 storms, but earlier events mirror this, exposed long-buried evidence in several cold cases. Real examples include items from the 1969 Manson murders resurfacing in storm drains and missing persons artifacts washing up after El Niño winters. Emotionally, Marilyn's arc reignites. Hope she had buried under protective pessimism claws its way back to the surface, painful and dangerous. Police analyzed the suitcase. No fingerprints, water damage, no maker's marks on the costume, knockoff, not Disney-issued, but the alterations are recent enough to suggest someone modified it post-abduction. Disneyland cooperates reluctantly, corporate fears media frenzy, but confirms no rabbit costume matching this description was ever park property. The case reopens as potential abduction with criminal intent. Marilyn refuses sedation, insists on staying at the station while Berea coordinates with Anaheim PD, Orange County Sheriff, FBI. She brings her old Polaroid, now loaded with fresh film, documenting every item recovered. Philosophical teaching from Gabriel Marcel. Hope is not passive optimism but active, defiant commitment to possibility even when evidence screams impossibility. Modern English learning. Flashback layering. 20 years later, she remembers. Contrasts past joy with present pain. Practice temporal shifts for emotional depth. Idiom spotlight. Claws its way back. Returns forcefully after being suppressed. As forensics begins tracing costume suppliers from 1970 and Berea interviews retired park staff, Marilyn feels the first real momentum in 2 decades. If hope can survive 20 years buried under grief and doubt, what buried possibility are you still carrying? What dream or truth might rise if you refuse to let the flood of discouragement wash it away forever? Detective Nolan Berea opens the investigation with surgical focus. Every costume shop within 50 miles of Anaheim in 1970 is cross-referenced, surviving owners and employees tracked down. Elias Crerar, now elderly and living above his shuttered Santa Ana shop, recognizes the altered rabbit head from a 1970 alteration order he vaguely recalls giving to his son Benjamin. Benjamin, living with OCD, working grocery stock, has digitized every receipt from 1965 to 1985 on Lotus 123. Marilyn and Benjamin sit at a picnic table outside Fresh Fields Grocery. Benjamin's fingers fly across the bulky laptop keyboard. After an hour they find it. May 15th, 1970, cash customer Raul Dreyfus ordered rabbit head costume alteration, nose button replacement, spectacles addition, facial seam work for sad expression. Marilyn's breath stops. The cashier confirms Raul Dreyfus shops monthly. Always cash. Always with his quiet daughter. Moments later, Raul and the woman, light brown hair, late 20s, appear in the lot. Raul, leaning on a tripod cane, begins smashing Marilyn's car door in rage. The woman slips a $20 bill into Marilyn's hand with help scrawled on the back. Marilyn dials Berea. Police swarm. Raul is arrested. The woman, Charlotte, rescued from a burning cabin in Majeska Canyon where Raul planned a murder-suicide after seeing the suitcase on news. Charlotte, smoke-damaged, voice raspy, tells investigators Raul stalked them, drugged her with a rabbit character, took her to a house, then a remote cabin, convinced her Marilyn was dead, homeschooled her, isolated her. She tried escaping twice, was caught, eventually submitted to survive. When Raul saw the news, he panicked, bought gas, intended to burn them both. Benjamin risked his life entering the flames, freed her chains. Vocabulary spotlight, surgical focus, extremely precise and methodical attention, and idiom breath stops, momentary paralysis from shock. Historically, 1970s Disneyland abductions were rare but real. Security relied on cast member observation rather than tech. Post-1990s reforms, post-Adam Walsh Act, Amber Alerts, transformed child recovery protocols. Emotionally, Charlotte's arc is excruciating, from terrified child to conditioned adult to tentative reclamation of self. Philosophical teaching from Hannah Arendt, forgiveness and promise-making are the only forces that renew human affairs. Charlotte forgives herself enough to accept rescue. Modern English learning, survivor testimony. He told me you were dead. I believed him. Uses simple past for credibility. Practice tense choice in trauma narratives. Idiom spotlight. Tentative reclamation. Hesitant return to identity. As Charlotte recovers in hospital, mother and daughter begin the long work of reunion. Marilyn testifies at Raul's trial. He dies of cancer before sentencing. What would you forgive? Yourself, your captor, the years stolen. If survival meant carrying shame as heavy as chains, would you let shame define the rest of your story, or would you choose to rewrite it with the help that finally arrived? Years pass. Marilyn and Charlotte move to a quiet El Paso house with a garden where birds land unafraid. Charlotte, now in her 30s, walks with a slight limp from old ankle scars but paints bright, defiant canvases of castles and rabbits that look joyful again. She speaks at survivor conferences, trains law enforcement on long-term abduction psychology, helps draft Amber Alert improvements. Benjamin Crerar becomes her closest friend. His meticulous nature and quiet courage anchor her. Elias dies peacefully, proud his shop's records helped end a nightmare. Marilyn volunteers at a missing children hotline, answers late-night calls from parents who feel hope dying, tells them, keep searching. The flood always comes. The red suitcase and altered costume sit in a California law enforcement museum exhibit on cold case breakthroughs, beside a plaque, Charlotte Hallberg, found after 20 years. Hope endures. Vocabulary spotlight, defiant canvases, artworks that boldly resist despair, and idiom, anchor her, provide stability and support. Historically, post-1990s reforms, Amber Alert 1996, Adam Walsh Child Protection Act 2006, owe much to persistent families and recovered survivors who refuse silence. Emotionally, The story closes in earned peace. Marilyn from shattered mother to mentor, Charlotte from erased child to empowered voice. Philosophical teaching from Simone Weil. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Marilyn's unwavering attention across 20 years eventually called Charlotte back into existence. Modern English learning. Legacy summary. She speaks, helps draft volunteers, uses present tense for ongoing impact, practice timeless present for lasting achievements. Idiom spotlight. Earned peace. Tranquility gained through hardship. On a clear morning, Marilyn watches Charlotte scatter seed. Birds land, unafraid. She touches her daughter's shoulder, feels warmth, knows the happiest place on earth once stole her child, but love, stubborn, searching, refusing to accept absence, stole her back. If 20 years of silence can be broken by one persistent mother who never stopped listening for a voice she feared was gone forever, what silence in your own life might shatter if you simply refuse to stop calling out? Keep calling. The answer is already on its way.